Несколько месяцев назад к нам пришла девушка с грудным ребенком.
A couple of months ago, a girl came to us with an infant. She and her husband had both been taking drugs at the time. The mother was breastfeeding the child, which meant that the baby had also been receiving a regular heroin intake. Coming here was for her a breakthrough. Drug withdrawal led to great suffering and pain for both mother and baby. The child became ill when it ceased to receive heroin-tainted milk. Seeing the baby suffer was a nightmare. She cried continually from morning to evening. One cannot sleep because of rheumatic pains. One sweats profusely. One has no inclination to work, and one is often aggressive. But having overcome the dependence, one should feel joy.
In dem zweiten Jahr, als ich hier in Russland war,
drug addicts approached me for the first time during my second year in Russia. They asked me whether I might be prepared to meet them and somehow help them find meaning in their lives and healing.
Sinn im Leben findet oder vielleicht geheilt wird. In Jaiva,
the parish bought a large house in Jaiva in which we arranged a church in the biggest room. There is presently a small community there. We also began work on a community school of life aimed at serving those wanting to break their dependence on drugs. A link was thus created whereby the parish community cares for the church as well as for the well-being of those dependent on drugs.
Und der Betreuung auch dieser Drogenabhängigen.
Мама у меня умерла, я оказался на улице, так получилось.
After my mother's death, I found myself on the streets. It sort of happened. My aunt chased me out. They decided it would be better if I moved out. They would then not have to pick me up from the police station or wherever. I used to come home at all hours of the night, and they probably got fed up. The rules were cruel at the previous center. First of all, children were undressed so as to prevent them from carrying anything in. Functionaries hit the children, the younger ones, I mean. Somebody would suddenly be forced to sweep or gather litter for no apparent reason. Children were bullied and referred to as dirt. If you tried to stand up to them, you would end up having to confront the elders who have been there for ages. They would come together and set upon you in threes. I know people who have tried to hang themselves or cut their veins so as not to become one of them. I ran away from that boarding school and began living on the streets. My friend Matwiej suggested glue sniffing as a means of forgetting everything. When I first learnt about this method and then tried it out, I soon realized that it really worked. I liked it and continued to sniff for the next 9 years. And of course, as I began to have to buy even more tubes of glue, where was I supposed to get the money from? I had to steal. We used to corner men as a band, strip them, rob them, and then cash in everything. I was 13 years old at the time. My father died when I was 5.
Я наркоманка.
I am a drug addict.
Принимаю наркотики уже 10 лет.
I have been taking drugs for 10 years.
Уже много всяких способов.
I tried all sorts of methods. Treatment, prison, but I would always go back to the drugs.
К наркотикам.
Свет, просвещению язычников и славу народа твоего.
Всегда спрашивают, почему ты начинаешь колоться.
Everybody always asked me why I began injecting myself, perhaps out of interest. I had everything when I began doing it. I had a family, a husband, a child, my own apartment. My husband was the first to give me a taste of drugs. And then the problems began. We began by selling everything in the house, clothes, equipment, everything that was saleable. Then we started selling drugs in order to be able to afford them. Then later, I ended up in prison for the first time. My daughter is presently with my parents. They took her into care because of all of this. I am tired of this life. I have nothing, no family or home. Life is empty. Only drugs, nothing more.
Только наркотики, наркотики. Все.
There are many young drug addicts in Berezniki. It's like an explosion, like a new war. Literally, a year and a half ago, there were fewer drug addicts. It's presently taken on epidemic proportions. There are very many, and they are all suffering, including the families. Nobody knows what to do. Very many addicts die of heroin overdose. They die because there is no one to help them in time.
Warum gibt es die ganzen Drogenabhängigen?
Why are so many people dependent on drugs? Of course, one could enumerate any number of reasons. One of them, however, is undoubtedly the spiritual demoralization caused by socialism. On the other hand, socialism nurtured some human values, so that its collapse left a real desert.
Aber der Zusammenbruch des Sozialismus hat eine Wüste hinterlassen.
Добрый вечер, хозяюшка. Я приехал к вам в Вифлеем.
Das andere ist einfach die materielle Armut.
There is also material poverty and a total lack of perspectives, which causes unemployment and leaves people feeling what we call lost.
Wir sagen hier verliert. Die andere Geschichte,
The other part of this story is that young people do somehow manage to find work, but bereft of higher values, end up spending their money on alcohol, drugs and gaming machines.
und in die Spielautomaten. Wenn man das sieht,
When one sees how society in our town is drifting because of these three problems, there is reason to cry.
durch diese drei Probleme,
How many families have been squeezed like lemons by this history of drugs?
fast jede zweite, wird ausgepresst wie eine
If
Zitrone.
nearly 80% of our young people try drugs, how many will become dependent?
Wenn 80% unserer jungen Leute anfangen, Drogen auszuprobieren, wie viel bleiben da hängen?
А ты и так там будешь спать, а местом своим не распоряжайся.
Хватит тебя, Маха.
А ты не вмешивайся. Я ее комнату...
Und die andere Geschichte ist einfach das,
There is the other side of the coin that those who buy drugs also buy out those who should be protecting them from drugs, and so the state framework becomes ever more ineffective.
kommt das staatliche Gefüge immer
Consequently, though drugs are an immense problem, young people continue to live in this hell.
Leben wie in einer Hölle dahin.
Здесь живут на данный момент.
There are currently 19 people living here. They are dependent on drugs and alcohol. They come here, above all else, because they want to. Here, at the School of Life, there is, above all, work and prayer.
Понимаете, это начало работы с нашими молодыми людьми, и я думаю, это очень хорошее начало.
There are cases of people who have heard absolutely nothing about God, and yet come here and pray together with us, and so their hearts are gradually opened. Work is also important, because through work we organize ourselves and bring order to our lives and our spirit. Orthodox believers and Muslims are also welcome. It is important that people should want to be healed. Contact with relatives is not allowed for 3 months, even by phone. All meetings are forbidden. That means that the person is here at all times, accompanied by a guardian angel. We trust no one. These are really very good people. One woman said that drug addicts and alcoholics are like diamonds that need to be cleaned to shine.
И любимое мое выражение было «с Богом».
My favorite saying before going out to rob used to be, God be with you. We thought about what we were doing, and we did have remnants of conscience. We weren't totally spoiled.
Я дальше продолжал употреблять клей, вот этот и алкоголь.
I continued to sniff and to drink, so I was sent to a hospital. That was in the spring. The treatment lasted 3 months. Of course, relatives used to take everybody home during the holidays, but they didn't know what to do with me. They used to phone everybody they could think of, but no one would dare have me, except Fr Erich. He wasn't scared. He decided to try, and for that I'm grateful to him. He took me into his family and opened a different and very new world to me. He explained that there are alternative routes, better than life on the streets. I've no idea where I would have landed had I continued my chosen lifestyle. Presently, nearly all my friends are in prison. You might say I'm the only survivor.
Так что я один выживший, можно сказать.
Вам нужно изучать русский язык.
Мои родители сказали мне, что или ты
My parents said, either you come here and live in the community, or you are not our daughter. We will no longer come to visit you or to know you if you continue to inject yourself. I wanted to change my life. I'm 35 years old, and there is nothing in my life. I have done nothing, achieved nothing, discovered no planet, continuously only on drugs. Earlier on, my God was only heroin. Now I know that there is a God who loves me and helps me. It is only the beginning of the road, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is why I carry such high hopes in my heart.
Поэтому такая надежда тут в сердце.
It's a totally different world, a different life.
Это совсем другой мир, другая жизнь.
Отойди к ним отсюда куда-нибудь,
Что здесь делаю я?
What am I doing here?
Может быть, это незаметно,
Perhaps it isn't
но
obvious,
я
but one could say
всегда
that I am
должна
showing them the
показывать
way.
им путь.
I am responsible for them
Я
in this house.
ответственная,
I
для
wanted to
них в
work
этом
with
доме.
people who drink or
Я
take
хочу
drugs,
работать именно
because there were many alcoholics in my house,
с людьми, которые принимают
and my
алкоголь.
husband was also a drug addict.
Жило много алкоголиков.
I had a dream, and I talked with God about it, that perhaps one day He will in fact put me in touch with such people. And so it came to pass. Clearly, God is serious.
Так и случилось. С Богом не шутят, видимо.
Я не ожидала, что я поеду сюда.
I did not expect to come here. Father Erich made an offer that I immediately accepted. I decided to come on the very same day, because such a problem also exists in my family. My son, Zhenya, has been living in the house in Yava for the last 3 weeks. It was about 10 years ago. He was in the army, serving in Chechnya. They smoked grass, but after his return here, he moved to heroin. It never even entered my head that such a tragedy could befall him, because he was a good son and a decent human being. We tried everything. He was treated in hospital. And all to no effect, because as soon as anything worked, he would begin again. I lived with this problem for a very long time. I couldn't tell anyone. I had no one to share it with. On my way to work, I passed near the Catholic Church in Bierezniki. I am an Orthodox believer, and I thought that the Catholic Church was of a different faith, that could not be reconciled with my own Orthodox faith, that there was no common ground. When I found out that there was, in principle, no problem, because we are all Christians, I began to go there. In every sermon, I found something for myself that made my spirit rise. Zhenya did not come with me, but always expressed an interest in how things had gone. He respected my faith, and with time matured, and decided to attend the Alcoholics Anonymous group, and then he came to Yava. That is how my son came to be here, and that is how I also came to be here. We presently work in 2 houses. In the second home, at the moment, we are installing the heating system and reconditioning 2 rooms. When we finish, we will start with the third home, which presently only has walls. The work is carried out by those who live here. That gives their treatment sense, treatment through work, through effort. We want to set up a carpentry workshop in the future, so that we can earn money by manufacturing furniture. Each one of us can become a carpenter.
Wie können wir unsere ganzen sozialen Aktivitäten finanzieren?
How do we finance our social activities? By remaining faithful to our ideals and not wanting anything for ourselves, only by helping people in need and bearing witness to the existence of a loving God. Then God takes care of everything. We never have enough money, and more often than not, there is a lot of worrying which in effect demands uncompromising trust. I must admit that there are days when I have no idea how we will pay for tomorrow's food, for the people here, as well as in Yaiva, for the children and everybody else. However, the Lord opens doors, and I must simply come to realize that. If we receive a donation of 15 euros, that is a great help for somebody in Russia. New Russians with their billions in Moscow are not interested in us. Believers, simple people, through their small donations give so much as they can. For us that means so very much, and that is how we finance everything. Every day a new miracle happens. We survive.
Jeden Tag ein neues Wunder, dass wir überleben.
Что я буду делать? Буду жить с этими ребятами.
What will I do here? I will live with these children, help them to find the road to change their lives. I will live in the second home with the girls. I left my work, which was well paid and which I found satisfying. I had an apartment and relatives, an 80-year-old mother, a sister and nephews. Yes, I left everything to be here.
Чтобы быть здесь.
When I retire, I will miss out on a few pension payments, but that doesn't worry me.
Женя дважды лежал в больнице.
Zhenya was in hospital twice. They eased the purely physical pain there. He endured for a while. He lived there for a while. But as for his soul, to change him, to make him change his consciousness and attitude to life, nothing was done about that. And that is the difference.
Он, наверное, еще не готов. Нет, он не готов.
No, he is most definitely not ready. Not ready to rejoin the world, to return to it. But I can see that he is changing. Changing, and for the better.
We have tried to follow our chosen path for over a year now, and I must admit that although we have several examples of people freed from their alcoholic addiction, it must be said that in our work with drug addicts, we lack such successes. We cannot say that anybody has completely stopped taking drugs. 2-3 people were on the right road, but then experienced a relapse. But we continue to consistently go forward along our chosen path, simply doing our bit, because we can see that Providence is with us. It is all, in truth, a large undertaking that costs a lot of effort, great attentiveness, but I must say that thanks to this work, I have learned to understand the truth about what the kingdom of God really means. Looking after addicts is perhaps the greatest challenge that any priest can be called to face.
I don't count the time. Perhaps I've been here for 7 months. It's all beginning to fit. I've been trained and acquired the skills of a plumber metalworker. I'm capable of earning my way normally by doing good work in my chosen field. My life here is taking on a new meaning.
Здесь я вроде как обретаю новый смысл в жизни.
If my mother were alive, had she not died so suddenly and unexpectedly, I would have changed 3 things. I would have lived at home, I would have sought an education, and I would never have gone out on the streets to steal. I would have gone out in the streets only for a walk, just like other children. And I would probably have been married by now. That's what I think.
Я хотел бы очень, чтобы
I would very much like all my friends who've remained out there on the streets and still lead such lives to have as much good fortunes as I've had. That's what I most desire.
в этой жизни так же, как мне, или даже больше. Это хотел бы я больше всего в жизни.
Я бы хотела поблагодарить.
I would like to thank God for being here in our community. There are people here who have lost everything, who have nothing. No home, nothing. Father Erich gives us a new life. He shows us that life without drugs and alcohol is beautiful. He leads us all to God.
Всех нас ведет к Богу. Если вас будут показывать,
If my interview is ever shown on television,
если вдруг мои
and if my parents see it, I would like to say to them, sorry. That is all.
все, пока не буду говорить. Я бы хотела сказать людям зависимым от
I would like to
наркотиков,
say
алкоголя,
to those people still dependent on drugs and
единственный
alcohol
шаг,
that the only path to healing
через который
is the one with God.
только путь с Господом, путь с Богом.
If they let Jesus into their hearts, they will have reason to hope for a cure. There is nothing more, no other way. Hospital or prison cannot help. Only God and Jesus. There is no other hope. That is all.